Today, I'm going to be talking all about what you can do to prepare your little one to read. I have 3 children who are 7, 5, and 2.5, and I want to share with you from my perspective and my experience all the things that I did to prepare my children for reading and what I'm currently doing to prepare my toddler for reading. The first thing I did with my kids is read to them. And I know you've probably heard this so many times before, but I want to just break it down a little further because it has a lot more depth than it seems. We read a variety of different books in our home, nonfiction, fiction, picture books, chapter books, etc. But for my toddler, I like to keep things very simple. So we have very cute short books that are rhyming, so they have those patterns of speech. And then we have different naming books like My First 100 Words and My First 100 Animals. These are fantastic books because it helps my son to be able to name things in his environment or even things that just exist in the world around him. There is a recommendation that you should read 1,000 books to your child before they enter kindergarten. And I definitely think that this is important to do for several reasons. One, it helps your child to be exposed to lots of different stories and it gets them excited about stories and develop that early love of reading. In addition to that, it really does help to broaden their vocabulary. However, I want to say that it's not about the quantity, so you're not keeping track of did I read 1,000 books, but I think the idea behind it is that you just devour books with your child and that is going to set them up for success in the future. In addition to reading written books and stories to a child, you can also tell oral stories to them. And so for both of these, you're going to want to think about how you can engage them and bring them into the story. And what I like to do to bring them into that story is ask them questions about it and also let them ask questions. I think that's a powerful thing when you not only invite your kids to really think about what they're seeing, but also have the space for them to wonder and to ask about the things that they're seeing on the page or the things that they're hearing in the story. When you are telling oral stories, this can be a lot of fun because you can use different sound effects and things like that. And examples of oral stories can be like folk stories like Little Red Riding Hood or The 3 Little Pigs, or something that's related to you culturally that you can pass down to your child. Then she said, "My grandmother, what big teeth you have." And then the wolf said, "The better to eat you with." Like I mentioned, we read a variety of different books in our home, and some of the ones that I love the most are ones that don't have any words in it. This is a great opportunity for your children to tell their own story using the pictures that are provided. And again, this sparks enormous curiosity for what's going on in this story and how they're able to develop it as they move along in the book. Now for that last one, that is going to be more for 3 to 4-year-olds, but also, draw your toddlers into that experience as well, because they're gonna have something to say even if you can't understand what they're saying. The other thing that I love doing with books is to bring them alive by being very interactive. So putting it in your body, using your whole body to come into the story and come into what's happening. A very popular book that is easy to do this with is called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. And this is something that you can put in your body, you can tap to the beat, it's very rhythmic, and there's also motions that you can do as you are going through this adventure of finding the bear. We came to a river. We can't go over it.
We can't go over it.
We can't go under it.
We can't go under it.
We have to go through it.
We have to go through
Ready?
it.
Another thing that I did while I was reading stories to my children, so from physical written books, is I really paid close attention to some of the things that they were noticing, not just in the pictures, but also with the text. One very interesting thing that my oldest daughter used to do was take her little finger and trace around the different letters of the words that we were reading on the page. And this was interesting to me because it was a cue that she was developing her print different awareness. So being able to notice that there is written text on the page and those symbols somehow match the things that I'm saying in my speech as I read the book. As she did this more and more, I decided to take my finger and glide over the words as I read to show her, yes, indeed, that these words matched what I was saying. So as my kids were continuing to read stories with me and do interactive things, the next thing that I did was playing with sounds. And just as we used our bodies to interact with stories, we used our bodies to express different sounds in words. When I was in college, I did a lot of research with teaching kids music and reading, so an integration experience, and this is something that I have brought into my home as well. One of those activities is doing action words with different sounds. So for instance, bend, bounce. This is really simple. You want to keep a beat to it, and you also want to choose words that you can do motions to. So catch and bend and bounce. Now I want to show you a very special activity called the vowel song, and this is something that I did with my kids to practice their short vowel sounds. It's not something I made up. In fact, the last activity also comes from a curriculum called Reading in Motion. So both of these activities are from that curriculum. Reading in Motion was created a while ago in Chicago, and they use it for their students to teach them reading. They have found so much success with this reading curriculum, and it's extremely interactive, and it integrates the arts into learning to read. I'm an antelope. I live in Africa. I'm an antelope. I live in Africa. And I have an itchy nose.
Actually,
Itchy every inch. I have an itchy nose. It's itchy every inch. Ostrich, octopus, ox, said the rain was coming soon. So up went my umbrella, under my umbrella, up went my umbrella, under my umbrella. And but everyone got wet, even elephants. Everyone got wet, even elephants. There I go, I made the sound. Another thing that I like to do with the kids to play with sounds is singing and doing rhymes, as well as doing some syllable play. And an easy way to do this is just to break up the syllables of names of the people who are in your family. So Mommy, Sayla, Jessie. And it's really fun if you have multiple kids and you get everybody involved in kind of like a circle situation. Say Jessie first, okay? Ready? Jessie. So how do we celebrate the syllables of Solana? That's right! Solana, Sayla, Mommy. So as my kids were playing with sounds and continuing to read stories and interact with stories, I started to build off of that and added a new element, and that was connecting pictures to initial sounds of words. This is super simple. You can actually do this with more than just pictures. You can do this with actual tangible items. So for instance, this picture of a fox, I would invite the kids to say, fox. A great activity that I purchased, and you can certainly get for your child, is this picture grid where they can match up the different pictures and it tells you what they are. Your kids don't have to really acknowledge those words or read those words, but you can use this as an opportunity to practice that initial sound fluency. And this is a dog. Can you say dog? Dog, very good. What is this? It's yummy.
It's an apple.
Can you say apple?
Apple.
Very good. Doing the picture and sound activity is something that I did a lot of before I introduced the actual symbols for the letters. What I chose to do with my kids is to introduce all the lowercase letters first. The reason why I did this is because logically a lot of English written language is in lowercase, right? So it just made more sense to me to do this first. The other thing I want to mention is that there is actually a specific sequence in which you can introduce sounds to your kid that are not actually the order of the alphabet. The reason for this is because there are certain letters that look very much like another letter. So for instance, B and D. And so I think the sequence is like A, S, D, and so on. I forget what, I'll put it right here for you so you can see, and I'll link it below. But essentially that will help the child to be able to differentiate those different sounds and not get them confused with others. This is definitely a mistake that I made. I'm gonna just be honest with you. And I went through the entire alphabet kind of in order, and I would definitely recommend that you use that different sequence of sounds so they don't get their sounds mixed up. From when I did research in college, I had these flashcards on hand. They have really bold and large letters on them. So if you don't have this, you can certainly make it on your own. And essentially what I did was I just took our time with it and I slowly introduced each letter. When I introduced a new sound to them, I would have them repeat it after me. And then I used our previous activity of attaching the sound to the picture, and I brought that into using our symbols to represent those initial sounds of the pictures. So for instance, we would say, and then we have fox. And now they're making that connection that they were practicing before with that initial sound. In addition to attaching those pictures to the sounds, I was able to start putting those pictures in front of the kids and maybe giving them one sound at a time, and they would pick all of the different pictures that matched a particular sound. Another way to help your child practice that initial sound is by making it a tactile experience. So for instance, having the child actually trace the letter as they say the sound, because again, they're making that connection between the sound and the symbol, and having this tactile experience is going to help them memorize what the form of the letter is and attaching that to the sound that it makes. These items in particular are Montessori sandpaper letters, and you certainly don't need to buy them to create that tactile experience for your child. You can make some on your own with things like felt, so an easier material that you can work with, or they do have Montessori sandpaper letters in a little booklet, and that is definitely a budget-friendly option, so I will link that for you below. Once you feel like your child is starting to get really comfortable with those initial sounds of words, it is time to start moving on to consonant, vowel, consonant words, otherwise known as CBC words. Now is the time where your child is going to start learning that words are made up of multiple sounds. So not just that one sound that they've been practicing in the beginning, but multiple sounds. And CBC words are a great way to practice this because they're only 3 letters long. A resource that I purchased within the last year that has been so fantastic for us to practice CBC words are these cards. They're like these sound cards that have images on them. So this one has a picture of a cat, and the child will put their finger on each of the dots to represent all of the sounds that they're going to use to blend the word cat. So k-at, cat. In addition to that, you can provide your child with different letter magnets. So I have these blue and red ones that are fantastic for having the child spell out some words, some CBC words. And again, they're gonna use those initial sounds that they've practiced and know pretty well to do this. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this video was helpful for you. Take care, be blessed, and I'll see you in the next one.